So it begins. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. The title is Attention That Changed the World. The attention that changed the world. Can the coughs of history can they be heard? I'll begin from here. I consider that every human being has a responsibility to step out of the world that they find themselves in the first place. Pretty much a child is born and various waves of data hit this child. As these waves of data hit the child is not just being spoon-fed food, it is being spoon-fed ideology and patterns of behavior. When you have it, when you can, just like how a person can recognize a word or saying, like you see a word, you know its meaning, so you can say that the evolution of behavior in society finds a similar place where it's as if uh, you behave in the cultural space as you have understood the cultural space. As these waves of data make contact with the awareness of the child is being exposed to the world. The child is not even a child to itself yet. What that means is before the child learns to speak or people communicate to the child is simply a moment of being without any identification to any sort of doership. Eventually, the child begins learning the ways of the world. Just like the bird cannot choose to make the sky its home, it must settle down on some branch of knowledge and build its home. And so human beings, as we have kind of been exposed to the various data, various thought structures, various ways form exists on this planet, we have to eventually choose a sort of allegiance. So I find that even though we watch Game of Thrones and we're like, movies, but at the same time, every person does have certain allegiances, they have seen certain experiential value in certain concepts, that those concepts can be relatable to them. You see, the whole discussion begins when the person begins to wonder how the world is here. When you look at the world, you see the world is not just the world. The world is how you have classified it to be, how you have segmented it to be. Fundamentally, it's all working through attention. This is incredibly important to recognize, that your attention is the center of your reality. They control your attention, they control your reality. Very similar to that saying where they say if they make you ask the wrong question, they don't have to worry about your answers. So as if imagine like we find this in war. Sun Tzu in his Art of War, he speaks about the deception being important in warfare. So what that means is when you have an opponent, the situation becomes where there is somebody. How can I tell you? It's as if like you cannot walk the same road, or you will both get at the destination. So pretty much it's this mentality that even Sun Tzu in The Art of War, he says it. He says, whenever you're far from your enemy, make him think you're near. Whenever you're near your enemy, make him think you're far. So even though wars with swords and shields have ended, we don't see people on the street fighting with swords and shields anymore. However, a sort of era, every person is trying to protect their kingdom and to be a king of their own throne. What that means is, think of it this way. A king back in the day, he sat on the throne, the whole kingdom was at his disposal. So the person who goes to work, comes late at home at night and sits down, their activities are going to be centered around, it's as if like your home becomes your throne, but eventually on a mystical level, your moment of being becomes your throne. So it becomes more interesting than wondering about others, how they are. You begin wondering about how you are, that is influencing how they are. So pretty much you begin to wonder about your part in existence, and you begin to see it has to do with experiential presence. The truths of this world are kind of hiding in direct experience, and we're indirectly speaking about it. This is why I feel language is a beautiful technology, yet it is not the truth. That means the pilot that is navigating, let's just take a normal pilot for example, all the passengers on the plane are being moved by the attention of the pilot. Okay? So internally, you are piloting your thoughts. You don't know this. You are a pilot of your attention. And internally, there's no form. Your intelligence works without form. It works through observance, through witnessing. Externally, in front of your eyes, it works through form. There needs to be a sort of precision that will be developed. It's as if you have to, it's as if the person is running away from their sins. They're running away from inefficiency, and the person doesn't understand. Unless you look at that inefficiency, you cannot move on. The issue is, guys, let me tell you something that's very incredible. At the same time, it is tragic. You see, a human being, their attention can be occupied. Right now, as I'm saying these words are occupying your attention. Throughout the day, various things occupy your attention. Okay? As these phenomena, these forms come into your attention, they eventually coagulate to be a structure. That means based on the number of factors the person considers, there's a number of potential efficient manners the reality can happen. So I eventually realized behind my eyes the world can be extremely multidimensional. I could classify it in many ways. I could see it in an atomic way. I could see it in an abstract way. I could see it in any other way I choose. The mind's freedom is glorious to some degree in regards to what can be imagined and what can be considered. Imagination is kind of like diving deep into the ocean of the mind, which eventually will bring you to how the mind was formed, right? So here's the unique thing. We have a Zen master by the name of Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma is a patriarch of Buddhism. Bodhidharma, pretty much, he's meditating. He goes to, long story short, he goes to, I believe it was Japan. He goes to Japan, and an emperor looks at him. He's like, Bodhidharma, I've spread Buddhism around. I've given books of Buddhism to people. At the same time, I've built statues and temples. Tell me, what merit does it have? Am I enlightened or something, man? I've looked at how much progress and dissemination of Buddhism I've brought. And Bodhidharma looks at this emperor, like looks at this king and says, no, all you have done is foolishness. And intensely he leaves, as if like he hasn't seen any value in that being's action. Okay? And the king is like, what the fuck? the king the king is kind of like dishonored, and he doesn't know what to do. He hasn't been treated like this since he became king. Now what happens is that Bodhidharma leaves the empire, and the bishop, the right hand man of emperor tells the emperor, listen, Bodhiyama didn't tell you it didn't have merit. You spreading Buddhism was good. It's just the fact that you wanted it to have merit. You had a desire. Your imagination was speaking before reality. That is why your contentment was hard to find. You see, the mind has an ability to consider infinitude. I recognized this when I was young, and this was the first moment in my life where I confronted the concept of a hollow infinitude, a hollow infinity. So, what is infinity? It is endless continuity, and endless continuity with change. That means the finite has to be contained. So, something being infinite, also, it has to do with the verb of the function, not just the noun of the function. It is, it's like an infinite dream. Your intelligence, you have to start from simple and move up to complexity, or you won't understand the complexity. This is what I comprehended in 2010. Not 2010, 2011. Like at the end of 2011, I comprehended something very important. I recognized the way I was climbing towards truth was wrong. I was on the wrong mountain trying to get to a different peak. So when I realized this, I recognized there was something missing. And for the next couple of years, as if my life went through serious changes, that I understood what that missing element to the moment was. And it was an inability to accept the self. That means something had happened where it was easier for me to believe, to consider thoughts to be me. That was the issue. I feel this is a sickness. I don't mean it that intense, but I'm telling you, thoughts are a technology. Any person who thinks they're a thought, they have forgotten nature's presence. Because nature's presence cannot be contained in a thought. Thought is the effect of an unknown cause. A known thought has an unknown cause. Okay, that is pretty much what neurologists find themselves wondering about when they see when they ask themselves about the hard and easy problems of consciousness, and in regards to why there is even an intention. So pretty much neurology's greatest question is, how is there a movement in empty space? Or pretty much neurology's greatest question would be, how can an electron have a mind? And how could that mind have a design? Right? So this is the incredible thing. There's two ways you can see the moment. You can see it as a real dream or a dream of reality. If you see it as a dream of reality, your allegiance is to the objective realm, and that is fine. That is necessary. But if reality is a dream, then you have become that person who has lived this life and lived the simulations of this life enough to step out of it. Okay, it's as if you will suddenly notice a moment where life will stop. It's as if veils of karma will fall. It's as if certain karmic structures shift because they finish their life cycle. And let me tell you what happens. This is what can potentially happen. There's only two ways the human being can go in regards to the intensity that it has to confront experientially. Either you will think you're the order and chaos will confront you, and in that moment your order has to fight the chaos. You have to meet the challenges of the day, you know, or it has to give in to the chaos. So what that means is either you will resist the world from changing you, or the world will simply change you. What mystical insight kind of acknowledged was that life is always changing. The Buddha was like, holy shit, there's suffering. And eventually he came to a conclusion, how do I get rid of this suffering? And then he understood there's a suffering that is self-induced, and there's a suffering which is a reality that must be accepted. I cannot reject that there's a tree right there. I'm on my balcony kind of speaking right now. There's a tree in the yard. I cannot reject it. I see it. It is there. To even reject what is here can even be ignorance. Did you know that? Mysticism and the explorations into the deeper comprehension of the mind has to do with an ability of an existential sensitivity. Our cultures, this is what Carl Jung did, something so important, and I can feel how he would have felt. He probably felt civilization was not ready to explore the mind, because if it did, it would immediately try to organize it, institutionalize it, and it would break the search, the authenticity of the search. You see, that's the difference between a true, this is what I believe academia aspires to, towards a person who wants to truly know something, to a person who just wants to know something. You will see many of these kind of people in life. And the most important thing is, I feel love cannot exist until the inner dimensions of the being are penetrated. I'll give you an example. I'll give you a hilarious example of my own personal life. When I was in high school in Canada, I I had a crush on this, particular girl who, in my mind, it was like she was so incredibly beautiful, like even geometrically, symmetrically. It's like she was so like beautiful that I, in my mind, every time she came to speak to me, or there was a group situation where I had to speak to her, I was kind of silenced. It's like, it's very funny. It's like, you see something, so you feel that is so beautiful that you in some sense feel like you can't say anything. You don't want to disturb that beauty, kind of like a flower a person doesn't want to pick. When you cut the flower from nature, disconnected from nature, you have in some sense gotten rid of its soul. Okay, you have gotten rid of its beauty. Okay, so anyways, so I had a crush on this girl. Okay, and so what happened, what was very interesting was that I didn't speak to her that much, and I regretted it later on, but suddenly I noticed something very strange. Later on throughout the years, I suddenly, I never had a proper conversation with her because I relocated, but like schools or whatever. But it was one of these things where my mind was creating that person's value prior to me even having a conversation and actually knowing what the person's value is. You see, this is the issue with nervousness, shyness, and tension. The person who's being shy or nervous, you think you're so smart that you see everything. Therefore, you feel you need to have a plan for everything. Sometimes it's like there's no need to analyze a slide. You just have to slide down it. You know, sometimes it's like life is not something to analyze. It is something where, in some sense, I shouldn't speak too loud. It's like 2 a.m. or something. It's exactly 2 a.m. Damn, my intuition is like spot on. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is that the mind generated a value creatively prior to actually knowing what was there. So I recognize, like right now, if I claim to know anything, it is a bold, kind of bold claim. Every claim is a bold claim when we're on a rock in the middle of nowhere. You see, it's just that how much of it do we want to acknowledge? And I find this is my only question. That means if in this existence no person ever sees me, no person ever hears me, I am kind of like as if I was never here, nobody ever acknowledged I was here. If that happened, I would at least want humanity to just give me an answer to one question before I left this plane of existence. And I wanted to know how 8 billion beings feel that we are temporarily here and life goes on, and our ancestors have lived in a certain way where we're all repeating, kind of trying to update the ways they lived in our own way, but also staying true to them, and all this this kind of program of civilization we're going. But let us just wonder for 1 second, what if 8 billion minds efficiently moved? We see fish in the ocean move together in harmony. We see birds in the sky, all of them fly together in some synchronized strange pattern, strange waves. Similarly, we see the human species and we're like, oh, we're at war. And so I find that the minds of human beings must begin, it's like now the world is commanding forth for the inner realities to emerge. As if people's inner intelligence has been brewing to a point where now, especially now, like 2019 as I'm speaking, it is crucial. It is so crucial to share that which could never be shared before because the technology and the instrumentation of it wasn't available. The future has a responsibility that the past has to always honor, and that is how to live with the mistakes of history. Pretty much, I would like to see 8 billion plus minds on this earth efficiently moving towards the greatest vision of humanity. I just want to see the attempt. Not that I want to see, I mean, like, I don't, on some level of me, I don't even consider myself too subjective or objective to even have emotions. Like, you will eventually reach a point, I find, that your emotional intelligence recalibrates based on how you are holding the world in your attention. Okay? For me, it's as if it's strange. Emotions became like weather. What that means is I kind of went to a point where I would not have any emotions, not like a robot or something, not like that, like a statue emotionless. I mean, like I would go through life without wanting to hold all the data. So what that means is it wouldn't matter what design came into my attention throughout the day because my attention was on the change of the day. How my day changes fascinates me as much as what changes in throughout the day. The waves of time clash against the shores of matter. The attention emerges as the god of what it does. That means attention comes and is organized. It is contained. It's very funny. It's as if your free will doesn't exist because it's like you don't exist. But then when you exist, there can exist a free will. So for me, the concept of a soul, strangely, it has a different allure. It has an allure of the pure unknown. That means kind of like a candle is lit in a light room, and this candle is temporarily lit, and you want to figure out why the candle is in the room. You see, it's one of those situations. We are temporary kind of materialistic creatures, and the physical component, we conclude that I don't know, it's like 100 years or something. I don't know how technology is going to change that. Probably it's going to extend it. But the thing is that you have to listen to the world, or you'll fall behind from it. That's another factor to take into consideration. So in this life, for me, I'll make this even more clear. There was this philosophy teacher on an exam. He wrote this bonus question that was why question mark. And the answer, some students wrote an answer like, why? I'll tell you why, because God made everything. And somebody else was like, no, because Big Bang happened. And many different students are trying to attempt to answer this bonus question. Eventually, all the students go in class and they see nobody got, except one student, okay? Nobody got the right answer. And it was then that the students looked at the teacher and they're like, who got the right answer? And the teacher looks at the one student that got the right answer and says, you stand up and say it. Stand up and stand up and share your answer. The student stands. You know, this student looks at the class and says, the answer I wrote was why? Question mark. And that was the correct answer. And it is the suggestion that the response to why, that question, WHY question mark, is why not? And so I am saying, why not? We see the greater efficiency of the civilization. Why not humanity realigns through an attention that changes the world by already seeing the values of a changed world? I mean, that's the ability of the mind. The mind is not something to be owned, you know? It is not some, because it's like you can choose to own atoms, but it's like you can't do much. For me, it has the nectar of life seems to be a sort of conceptual, uh, uh, how would I say it? It's like you have a mind. This is why in language we have the saying where you say that person has lost their mind, and we say that person has found their mind in India. You know? So for me, reality is when experience breaks out of language to find itself anew. When you realize the mind is creating the system's meaning. You realize the mind in itself is the meaning. You recognize the presence of phenomena is the intelligence of the world. You know, it's like somebody believes in God, somebody else is saying on this balcony, I believe there is an unknown intelligence. I believe this intelligence is so incredibly unknown that our knowledge is on a tiny pebble in a light beam in comparison. It is all about studying sight, because that's what we have access to. As you study sight, you begin to see reality can be in various dimensions. Carl Sagan shared this story in one of his videos on YouTube, uh, where in this video Carl Sagan. It was a TV kind of show. Carl Sagan had on his table a bunch of 2D squares and triangles and a circle. And then on his table, he also had a cube, and he had something else, which I'm not going to get into. And Carl Sagan shared the story of the Flatlanders. He didn't create the story, some other person did, but he relayed it, which was a great contribution to the species. And the story of the Flatlanders is this notion that in this two-dimensional world of 2D triangles, squares, and circles, all the circles and squares are all united. They're all like, we're all two-dimensional beings, yay! You know, they're in Flatland, okay? However, these Flatlanders, suddenly one of them sees a square appear out of nowhere, and he gets shocked. And he sees this square suddenly disappear and appear somewhere else, and he gets even more shocked. The Flatlanders are like, how could this two-dimensional being so powerful that it is just teleporting everywhere, this two-dimensional Flatlander? And eventually they see it's not a two-dimensional Flatlander, it's a cube. That means the mysteries of this dimension are the answers of another. Imagine a cube on a table. You pick it up and you move it somewhere else. The surface, that 2D plane of the cube making contact with the flat land is now relocated. Okay, so I'm trying to say that what had a three-dimensional explanation was a two-dimensional miracle or revelation, or exploration, or whatever you like to, however way you like to use language in this context. So this is the notion that there are deeper dimensions to the world, but how far are we willing to go and explore them, and how necessary is it? These are both important questions, because sometimes you have to keep the illusion. Okay, that's the issue. This is why I don't believe the whole world should get enlightened, and I don't even believe that's possible. Because enlightenment is not an individual activity. It is the recognition of the inseparability of the individual activity with the cosmic activity. It is when the sky in front of your eyes is the same sky behind your eyes. It is the ability to see the world and see this world echo subjectively in various streams and branches. And sometimes your imagination and memory, or even how your communication occurs, it will eventually find natural rhythms. When it finds natural rhythms, it tunes into them, and something incredible happens. For the first time in your life, you begin experiencing your intelligence as part of a field of intelligence. That is the value of synchronicity. This is why Carl Jung was like, whoa, what is this? And it was like, I don't know if he eventually found out the way I'm saying, but I believe what it is the recognition of fields of intelligence. And we see these fields of intelligence, of course, subjectively, because we have laws in society. And laws in society are very fascinating to me. You know why? Because they are like an idea everybody needs to acknowledge. Just like you need to acknowledge the stoplight, it's like, it's an idea, subjective kind of position that must be acknowledged. And that's the importance of honor, because it means that you don't think every person you meet, you understand them properly and they understand you properly. The Buddha was kind of like intense about it. He's like, you're born alone, you die alone. He didn't say it like that. I think that's more like from some movie. But what Buddha actually said was that it's like you enter this life alone, and if there are companions, that is a blessing. You see, it's like your karma has to do with your expectation of your moment. Your expectation of your moment can too much pull you internal. And that's what, how can I tell you? Like, I'll give you an example of this. This is why I'm saying this. I don't, schools don't have, I speak about a subjective evolution, which I feel schools must teach, but the academic, the educational system is too strict for its own good. Or should I say too strict for its own creativity? Just consider it like this. Right now, I'm looking at myself. This is a live stream, okay? So we're live, and in this moment, I acknowledge that my body, physical body, is here. I also acknowledge that this visual sensory data is somehow being watched, and this watcher is identifying with a subjective positioning of objectivity. Okay, it's as if I can imagine a canoe between the branches floating in my yard, but the canoe is not there. It is internally there. It is externally not there. Therefore, the suggestion that there's an internal kind of copy of the world you're living in, right? So in some sense, language set us free, but it set us free into a simulation. It's like, imagine that moment where all those prisoners were like, yay, we're free, and they're like, oh my god, the world is a prison. I mean, I shouldn't say it like that, but I'll say it like this: nature is too wise for man's concepts. This is why you must preserve the natural state and keep it as the highest honor. When you see a person being naturally themselves, you should have your soul should dare not disturb nature, unless it is you become a mind that is experiencing various bodies in your moment of being. The space of this mind is attributeless. That's why I think space is really cool. Not outer space, just space in general. Because it is attributeless. It is like glass. The soul is like glass. Whatever is under, like the Yoga Patanjali Sutra said like this, where it's like a glass orb. Imagine this sphere rolling around various colored cloths. So this sphere takes the color of what it is under. The mind takes the shape of not only the environment, but what the environment envisions to be. So I find that when a person can give enough time, like this is the only task, this is the only path to success. It is concentration. Just concentrate on something that is both individually and collectively efficient. And how else, like, can you really fail? Because this is the notion, guys. It's endless effort because it's too important not to put an effort. But this endless effort is not ignorant of the body. It's not like I'm telling you become a workaholic of your soul. Become like a solar workaholic. I'm telling you, watch this life and you choose based on your first action in the morning what senses of personality emerge. It's incredibly fascinating because nature's secrets are on some level unfathomable. I'm just throwing words at an empty sky. Like I'm throwing language like a spear into an empty sky. That is the greatest finding of knowledge. That the unknown is more. So what that means is when the unknown is more, suddenly the approach to truth to searching clarity, the meaning of clarity changes. We see that nature was here first, then our eyes opened. Therefore, our eyes have opened in how nature's eyes have already been opened. So therefore, it's like your inner reality, contemplatively, the ego dismantles itself because the authenticity that the ego sought was the vision of the soul. And your soul is not like a badge. Your soul is, it is not a concept. It is the eyes of existence in the moment. So responsibility plays a big role, but this responsibility becomes universal. As it becomes universal, you suddenly recognize, you become extremely playful because of the vastness of the dimensions of knowledge. A person who stands between two mirrors and experiences an empty infinity realizes that an implication of sensory data uh, is not accurate to how the conceptual data works. So pretty much the objective realm is not in alignment with the subjective realm. There is a kind of saying in various mystical cultures where they're like, what you can observe, you are not. So right now, like if I can observe this computer in front of me, I am not the computer. From outside of it, something is seeing it. So every human being should consider that life is kind of like a hill. You go up and then you come down. What that means is your body, your body's expression is actually 50 years. I'll give it due to society. I'll say, let's say till 50 years of your life, your physical existence will be, you can go uphill. You can go uphill as much as you want. But eventually you will see it will go downhill, which means the physical body's expression, as if the light of the candle is eventually coming to an end. We all have to acknowledge this. There's nothing to fear about this, by the way. It's like, okay, it's like here, there was, oh man, if I can find this, it was a quote from Epicurus. Chances of me finding this quote right now is ridiculous. Like, probably I can't find it. Yeah, it's impossible. Oh, wait. Oh my God. The thing is, guys, the keyboard of my computer is messed up, so I can't even type the thing. I think I found it. Wait. Oh no, wait. Um, oh my God. Just a second, guys. I'm trying to look for this quote. Okay, I found it. Wow, nice. So Epicurus, ancient Greek, I guess, philosophical mind, he says, death does not concern us because as long as we exist, death is not here. And once it does come, we no longer exist. Do you see? So as if fear is hollow in the first place. So pretty much, external expression is amplified as you go uphill. Internal expression is amplified as you go downhill, and they're opposite sides, like it follows. Um, so the wonder of existence transcends the stories of its own belief, finds itself in a moment prior to any value or thought. In such a moment, what can one do? Either the objective aspect of your intelligence moves, or the subjective aspect moves. Or in some sense, you fully trust the unknown. That means I found it fascinating, guys. You know, if you ask the religious man, he will tell you that in the Quran, for example, or in, I think the Bible has a different approach towards this, but in many holy books, there is the suggestion that, not suggestion, there's like the holy book is saying that God has no partner, and in some sense, it is unknown. So God's will forever be unknown to man. Do you see? And so this notion means people, and then there's the concept, like for example, Islam, the word means submission. And submission means giving in to giving in to an intelligence, okay, giving in to a sort of perception of reality. So this submission is not good or bad. I'm not giving it any value. I'm just explaining it. However, it's this kind of notion that the religious viewpoint is kind of. I examine it like this. It's like you surrender to the unknown, and you worship the unknown, and the unknown creator of the universe exists everywhere in an unknown way. So what that means is it is the surrender of knowledge to experience, or to some path, some direction. You see, a belief does not exist until the person holds it. Certain mystical poets, one that comes to mind is Jalaluddin Maulana Rumi. And I don't know, I can't access the exact quote right now, but the quote is something that says like the human being is like a straw, like an instrument, um, the human being is an instrument for the divine will, something like that. Which in some sense can be translated as humanity is the dream of God. Ooh. This oscillation between the known going towards the unknown and the unknown coming towards the known, this notion that the human being is an instrument to the laws of nature, or God's mind in whatever way you choose to consider it, one begins to see eventually they are left to the simplicity of their reality. That means once you are tired of constantly wanting to see the complexity in phenomena, you will find a sort of ingenious calmness. This ingenious calmness is the pure mind that has detached from data to observe it. It's as if you don't understand. The moment you claim something as your own, you're fooling yourself. It is ignorance. And culturally, it's, of course, it's an act we must definitely play. It's as if the actor can do anything on stage as the actor, but knows that when the play is over, it's over. And so it's like in ancient times, for example, the Vedic culture, they acknowledge existence as a lila, as a play. You know, it's kind of like similar to how Shakespeare saw the world and saw it as a sort of theater, you see? A sort of tragedy and a comedy. So what that means is we begin to see it's kind of, and any viewpoint can fall into this, in the sense, for example, science is seeing that we are a hallucination of atoms. We are a hallucination of particles. It's very easy to make an atom your god. You know, the same claim that it's like we don't understand, but it's one world here. But this one world is divided up. It's like a broken mirror that truth is looking at itself in. Like a shattered mirror, the pieces are apart. The true presence of the being is cluttered by false identification with temporary forms. Socrates tells us a man who is good for anything ought not to calculate the chance of living or dying. He ought only to consider whether in doing anything he's doing right or wrong. Yep, yeah. And that sense of right and wrongness has to do with an abidance with how the moment is occurring. It's a sort of rhythmic alignment, I consider. So, guys, thanks for tuning in. There's this funny meme about Socrates, guys, where it's like a picture of Socrates and he says, told he's the wisest man in Athens, knows nothing. Like Socrates' claim was that the unknown again is bigger. Socrates has this saying where he says the only truism is to know that you know nothing. I'm going to share this other meme, which is it's incredible. It's like a picture of kind of Frank Sinatra smoking a cigarette, and there's these three quotes and like divided over this picture. The first quote on the top, it says, "To be is to do," Socrates. Then we have in the middle where it says, "To do is to be," Sartre. Sartre was, I, I guess, existential atheist, and he was a very profound, very important French philosopher. He's kind of one of he kind of he's a great philosopher. He's a great philosophical mind. And so Sartre says, so Socrates says, to be is to do, and then Sartre says, to do is to be. And then at the end of the meme, it's Sinatra. It's a quote from Sinatra where he says, "Do be, do be, do." Socrates has this other quote where he says, "It's not living that matters, but living rightly." You know? The pursuit of truth has to occur in the person finding a reflection of what they are. It's very easy for a person to go in front of the mirror and see themselves, but it is not easy to see a reflection of your mind, because the reflection of your mind is found in the effect of it. Your mind, let's say it's a cause of intelligence, so that which it produces, your art, your imagination, your thoughts throughout the day, how thoughts even emerge and come and go for you, all of these come down to how far the being is willing to study life, to actually see what's here before the final curtain is pulled. And so, in this Leela, in this play of life, in this kind of theater of elemental forces, what can man do? And you simply see, this is why I say the meaning of life is silly. That's it. It's silly. Because it's as if we're trying to put emptiness in a box. There are some things that our language currently, any language so far currently, does not have access to certain experiences that cannot be put in that language. It's as if the words for it have not even come into existence yet. This is why the past, the purpose of the past is to be there for the present moment. And the purpose of the future is to be there for the present moment. Or I could say it even in a more incredible way, because I'm seeing it as in a triangular fashion. The purpose of the present moment is to be there for the future. And the purpose of the future is to be where neither the past or the present could be. Pretty much, I'm saying 8 billion human beings should all unite in an efficient way. They don't have to change the way they're living. They just all have to acknowledge a new dimension where we can build upon attempts of kind of recreating a new global society. Because we are cultural creatures and our entertainment, people are drawn to entertainment. And entertainment keeps their knowledge limited to cultural patterns. Now, the issue is cultural patterns change very quickly, but like knowledge, what they teach in educational system seems to be ancient, and what they show on TV seems to be the newest thing ever. So so what I'm telling you is that you have to kind of open your eyes by seeing they were never closed. Find the attention that can change the world. You start by first making your individual reality efficient, then serving the collective reality and making that efficient, then eventually realizing their inseparability, and then through a completion of a full acceptance of how the manifest living world was a display for you. Attention continues, and do not fear the silence, do not fear the stillness. Seldom it is said, but all meaning, all language, all form, all motion has come from stillness, silence, and the glory that is the beauty of emptiness. A sort of glorious yet intelligent emptiness pervades all. There's not just individual beings in this world, there's also collective beings. The first collective being that man was introduced to was a thought. Thoughts are collective beings. Let me tell you why. Because they can control a group of people. That's when you see certain institutions, certain projects that are occurring on the surface of this planet, you see it's as if it's like one road is chosen by everybody to be the only road everybody has to walk on. It is meaningless. It's as if trying to put everybody on the planet in one room. That's the issue with a fixed belief. It has not understood that the world changes before our eyes. And sometimes the world has to change before your eyes can. It's a living thing. It's like there's no instruction booklet, I believe. And I mean, you can choose to abide by a certain belief, but I'm trying to tell you, like, don't put a box over your head when the sky is uh, the colors in the sky are awe-inspiring. Don't put a box on your head when the world is here. It took us 4 billion years to even be able to acknowledge this reality. Evolution must ask itself, why am I evolving? And you must take it into consideration. They say this thing that somebody went to a scientist who was constantly trying to break the atom and see different particles, constantly try to break and see what is it composed of, what is it composed of, what is it composed of. And so the person came to the scientist and said, hey man, if you're cutting things up all the time, how can you ever see what you find? Because you can endlessly keep wondering about what's this element made of, what's this element made of. You see, so I find that science is finding itself shocked because the texture of reality is shifting. The changeless and the changing dance is one moment. Your body is made of earth. Your mind is made of the sky, is made of sky. Your body is made of what is known to you. The mind is made of what is unknown to you. Just comprehend the incredible ability that novelty brings. Every day happens once. We have one lifetime to see the potential, vision, and greatness of the species. It is okay. This is one group I find every person can be comfortable with. Our humanity is our common denominator. And our humanity is not just an idea, shape, form, color, or something. It's as if, like, it's ridiculous for me. I can't even understand how people can believe uh, they can discriminate against one another. We are changing creatures. You can't judge change. You know, it's like you can call somebody weak, but eventually in a couple years you see they're like fucking lifting like cars. You know, so I'm telling you, you cannot in a changing world, you cannot hold something for too long. But this doesn't mean beauty is a moment cannot contain eternal beauty. It's as if it's an intersection of a horizontal and vertical dimension. As Aristotle says, it is the sign of an educated mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. Watch the magnificence of the world. Then every moment is your teaching. You can't have there's no student or teacher. You may choose to close your eyes to the world, but the eyes of the world are open. Don't fear fear. Don't fear thought. Just acknowledge yourself as a moment of being. Find contentment with how you're being in all dimensions. And then play around and navigate thought. Our attention is as important as the light that is being the world in our eyes. People die, but humanity never can. The intelligent urge to be the next is your existence is the proof of your divinity. Much blessings and namaste. The world has changed as the attention has. Much blessings and namaste.